So I'm going through your take on your wide assignment, and I'm noticing a couple of your submissions are either chronically underexposed or overexposed. And what I mean by chronically is that every shot is either underexposed or overexposed. And that's an indication to me that you might not know that your camera has an exposure compensation dial or a button that might have been set at a -2 or a -1 or a +1 or a +2, resulting in overexposed or underexposed images. And if that's the case, then anything you take is going to be either underexposed or overexposed. So I want to talk a little bit about how to go through and correct that with your particular camera. Now, lots of different cameras out there, so let me just kind of go through this theoretically, and then if you have questions specific to your camera, let me know, and then perhaps I can walk you through on how to go through and fix the setting on that. An exposure compensation dial is really set up to go through and say, well, I like the median exposure, but I might be shooting something where I want to pop the colors, and so to do that, I want to expose everything at a stop underexposed. Or I want to go through and get detail in my highlights, and so I'm going to shoot everything a stop overexposed. And that's why you would use that dial to go through and make those types of corrections in terms of exposure. When I was shooting professionally, and I would shoot Fujichrome, it's a slide film that way. I would underexpose it by a half a stop because it saturates the colors better that way. And then if I ever printed from a slide, I can compensate back in the printing and bring the overall highlight exposure back up, just in how long I would go through and print the photo for. You're not doing that here, and there are other ways, there are other reasons why we have exposure compensation. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. So I'm going to show you on my camera here. This is a Fujifilm X-M1 that I'm shooting with, and I wanted to show you just at least in one of the things I don't like about this camera is this dial right here. Because I have a tendency to hit it. And what that dial does, especially if I'm in the auto mode, program mode, or shutter priority mode, is it goes through and sets my exposure compensation. And it does that here. I'm going to hold this up so you can see it and let it expose. So this indicator right here, we see the +0. That's indicating whether or not my exposure compensation dial has been tweaked. Now watch what happens when I do tweak it. Okay, 2/3 overexposed, 1 stop, 1 1/3 stops, and so on. You see that overexposure happening if I go back the other way. So if I happen to bump that, and I don't know that I did bump that, it'll go through and do the rest of my take at that compensation, and we don't want that to happen, right? And that'll go through and tint your take. And since you're getting graded on the perfection of your exposure, you want to make sure that your exposure compensation dial is set at 0. It's zeroed out. Okay. If you have more questions about this, you know where to find me. Let me know what kind of camera you have, and we can both go through and look it up and see what needs to happen in terms of setting your exposure compensation. All right. Cheers.